So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We have the third session just to be started. And as we heard in the previous session that we have a lot of barriers, and some people told that came to the conclusion that that is perhaps not nice to talk only on the barriers, but we have to be more optimistic, and we have the opportunity to hear the success stories. This is the heading of this session, success stories of overcoming widening barriers and measures for the future. So in the first, we have 5 distinguished speakers: Kadri Ukrainski, Kaisa Kononen, Ülle Jaakma, Lotte Ströbach, and Christoph Quitman. And your affiliations are given on the slides and in our conference package, so I don't waste time in introducing you in detail. And the keynote will be given by Professor Kadri Ukrainski, please.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'm presenting here not only my opinion, but rather the work which we did together with my colleagues from Tallinn Technical University and Universities Estonia. And we did a work much broader than I will discuss today here. I'm focusing mainly on the policy implications for widening participation of mainly moderate innovation countries. But since there have been much talk about Horizon 2020, then I think I would rather focus on Baltic Sea region. Okay. I think it's become self-evident now that Baltic Sea region cooperation should not be taken for granted just because of the close physical proximity of the countries. There are very few thematic fields that actually can rely on this proximity and have a really very self-evident common interest or topic, like maritime industries, and we heard about climate, etc. So what we have been thinking is that the effectiveness of the Baltic Sea region policies depends largely upon the functional proximity that these countries would have in the region. And what is important first is to sustain the existing functional proximities, which is not self-evident in the era of austerity instruments or measures. And secondly, to try to increase this functional proximity if you really think that this Baltic Sea region is a region where we should aim towards more strategic cooperation. So what we mean by this functional proximity, this is perhaps not something very easy to understand, but we mean here innovation and knowledge generation capabilities with the focuses that would really attract also other agents in the regions to cooperate or to put joint efforts in. Those thematic, the focuses can be thematic, they can be really domain specific, like science field specific, but also process specific, like co-creation or top-down processes or else. And of course we can measure this proximity by the frequency of collaborations and, for example, the growth of frequencies of collaboration, or how widely the initially uncollaborative or inactive participants have started cooperating. And what we mean here really is not only scientists but also entrepreneurs and public sector managers, because public sector is also consisting of very different layers, agencies, etc., having very different motives for cooperation. What we have witnessed is the variety of the instruments in Baltic Sea regions towards funding different cooperation activities. And the growth of this, the number and the variety of instruments has been beneficial to the actors, which benefit from more diverse and wide funding opportunities, but it added to the difficulties of steering the cooperation within the meta region to achieve this functional proximity. And we have also witnessed very different motivation and capabilities of actors in joining those activities together with scientists. And I mean here industry, public sector agencies, funding agencies, etc. I think most of the Baltic Sea region countries, and especially the Baltic countries, have aimed at wider integration to the European research area, and despite of the fact that the funding may have increased in some countries, the wider integration has still not been achieved. And it is also evident that those countries have not achieved the access to the core networks in European research area. One of the specific problems is visible in moderate innovator countries, but also in the context of different instruments around Baltic Sea, is that there is a large relational proximity that is assumed by different instruments. And here we mean the compatibility of institutional structures and regulations and rules to do the collaborative research. And it is quite difficult for the moderate innovator countries to respond to the need of that larger relational proximity. What we have been thinking, if we would like to increase the cooperation in Baltic Sea region, that the precondition of that would be increasing the functional proximity. And also, if we would really would like to start acting as one region, functional region, then also perhaps we would need some more top-down coordination. And what we have used here is the kind of division of different policy instruments into sermons, which are more soft instruments regarding information sharing, mobility, etc. The sticks, meaning soft regulation, agenda setting, strategy, and priority setting, and also the carrots that could be the financial incentives for researchers to do more collaborative R&D projects. And stemming from those instruments, we have actually started to think what would be the novel instruments that could be used in the Baltic Sea region. And by novel, we mean mostly new for the region, not new like in general, because in many countries such national instruments might be in place already. The first kind of group of instruments where perhaps more soft ones are dominating are those which try to increase the functional proximity. And here the arrow looks very optimistic and fat, but actually it is like baby steps. It will be small steps at a time, which in longer term would increase the functional proximity. And of course, for example, if you take as a first one the Baltic Sea network challenges or prizes, which could signal to the researchers that there is a political will, that we really would like those, not only researchers, but also enterprises to work together towards Baltic Sea region aims. Of course, there is always possibility to use the competitive process of Horizon 2020, and what is not. You saw from earlier discussions how many quite successful applications remain without funding. So there is always the chance for individual countries to agree upon funding the second best projects. What we also have been thinking is that there is perhaps limited access to the information about different specializations and capabilities of the actors among Baltic Sea countries. And maybe here the researchers are not the worst informed parties, but such virtual service centers would be welcomed by SMEs, for example, searching for innovation partners, but also for public sector agencies in building up the kind of partnerships which are more and more prevalent also in Horizon 2020. So by saying the centers, it doesn't mean creation of another organization, but within existing organizations, these functional centers could work and be linked from every single funding agency's website, for example. And also shared service centers, where a lot has been spoken about NCPs and empowering them more, etc. But it leaves out actually the Baltic Sea instruments. So if we would like those to be more connected and available to the agents, then we should also think about how train the trainer in the Baltic Sea region. And of course, if we aim at a more stronger cooperation, then we should increase top-down steering possibilities and top-down incentives. And for example, what we meant by Baltic Sea Region Challenge could be the coordination of national instruments. It's not, again, creating something new funding body, but rather aligning and agreeing upon coordinated way of different funding instruments, and thematically as well, to select some niches or core specialization possibilities for individual countries. One, of course, more innovative and maybe worthwhile also, like labeling, is Baltic Sea Region Breakthrough Accelerator, which could actually pick some very narrow fields, very innovative in very new science fields, emerging projects, which of course are very risky, but could be developed into rewarding ones if later on they could be submitted to Horizon instruments, etc. And also here, common service areas was one thing that we thought of, which could be oriented rather to diffusion, and for example, making or designing the common understanding of among Baltic Sea region actors about joint benefits and joint future, because it could be used, for example, to jointly procure different feasibility studies, future studies, etc. Because I think one of the major impediments is the lack of understanding of different benefits that all the countries could get out of this cooperation. Okay, thank you.
And the next speaker will be Kaisa Kononen from the Bonus Office, Executive Director of the Bonus Program.
Thank you and good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me here to talk about bonus. Just a few facts about bonus if some of you do not know what bonus is. So bonus is a research program by 8 EU member states surrounding the Baltic Sea, and also Russia participates bonus program through bilateral agreements. It is a bottom-up initiative by national funding agencies, and it started as an ERANET in 2003, sorry, it's already almost 15 years ago, which brought together the funding agencies in each of these 8 countries. It took 5 years to develop some kind of common understanding what a joint program would be like, what kind of themes could be included, what kind of mechanisms for managing this program could include. And finally, starting from 2012, we have been one of the 5 Article 185 programs funded by the European Union, 50%, and by the national funding institutions, another 50%, with total funding of 100 million euros. So the basis of our operation is a strategic research agenda, which was developed by a very broad consultation by including the academia, the policy side, and the funding agencies, and it includes 5 priority areas or strategic priorities, which are divided into 19 different themes. And these themes are the basis for the calls for proposals and consortia to make proposals. We have had 5 calls, and the last one closed just a couple of days ago. We have now 40 projects running or have been running, and 13 only have been finalized. 27 are ongoing, and we will still have some few projects coming. We have more than 100 universities and institutes and 35 businesses included, and more than 1,000 researchers. We are now in a stage that we actually had to, our work was evaluated, final evaluation was carried out a year ago, and even if we still are in full operation. And we are now preparing the second phase, where the idea is not to only strict in the Baltic Sea, but also extend to the North Sea from 2021 onwards. So the projects, they are very much focusing on environmental and sustainability issues. They focus on nutrient loadings, they boost sustainable fisheries, look at safer maritime activities, and develop methods and approaches to tackle the trade-off between sectors. Monitoring and assessment is included, also basic research on ecosystems. And so what we have learned during these years of operation, compared to the projects which were funded in an earlier stage, 2009 to 2011, the participation of EU 13 countries has slightly increased from 15% to 21% in this current Article 185 process. But that is mainly because of the success of the Estonian institutes and universities, whose participation has increased 3 times. We made a very thorough bibliometric analysis of Baltic Sea research publications before bonus, during bonus, outside bonus, and within bonus. And it showed it was really comprehensive. It included about 20,000 peer-reviewed articles analysis. And it showed very clearly that there has been a clear shift from single country authorship to 2 or more countries authorship in all countries. So that really this scientific cooperation between the countries has increased tremendously. And it also, this bibliometric analysis confirmed that the scientific quality of the papers in peer-reviewed literature from bonus projects was remarkably higher than from non-bonus, also taking into account the time development. And as I mentioned, the final evaluation was carried out a year ago. The evaluation was praising many issues. It says that the bonus was very relevant, it was efficient, it created EU added value, and it was adding coherence. But one of the challenges mentioned there was something that is not new to anybody here, because that's why we are here, is that while bonus increased total research capacity, some of the smaller states increase the need of capacity building in the form of people and physical resources. So we have not, of course, been able to somehow favor Baltic kind of EU 13 countries, because our decisions are based, and selection of projects is based on scientific excellence, quality of implementation and impact. So this isn't anything we cannot do, but we have been thinking that this is really a longer time process, and that is why we have specific activities towards the young scientists. The projects themselves organize summer courses of themes of their project themes, but also in this central management level we have paid attention. We have arranged generic courses, how to be a more efficient researcher, how to manage your time, how to deal with your supervisors, colleagues, how to handle ethical issues. And this we have organized them altogether 6, and 4 of them have been in Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia. They have been very, very, very popular. More than 100 participants, for example, in the course in Riga, and more than half of them were coming from the local and nearby countries. So we think it's really important that we have this long-term perspective and focus on these young scientists who will be the next leaders of the future. We would really like to create a community that these best young scientists stay in this research community and become the very, very successful researchers in their later careers, despite the fact that being a young scientist is mainly some sacrifices. It's hard work, low salary, and that some other fields, businesses and others can be very tempting in their world. So, as I mentioned, we are preparing a second phase, and one of the topics in this preparation project will be to explore how this structural funding could be better used to solve this problem we are dealing with now, and also these solutions and ideas coming from this conference will be very useful to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we have the opportunity to hear about the one success story, which includes the two partners. The Estonian partner is represented by Ülle Jaakma, who is a professor from Estonian University of Life Sciences and the vice rector of that university.
Good afternoon. I am quite proud that we have selected to show you as a success story, and indeed we think that it is a success story for ourselves also. But let's have a brief overview. What is our project about? This is SEARMET, which means that scientific excellence in animal reproductive medicine and embryo technology. This is about the reproductive biology in animals, but in our project, in our twinning project, we succeeded to link our topics also with human medicine. And I think that maybe this was one of the points why our twinning project proposal was selected to finance. Our partners in this twinning project are University of Sheffield from United Kingdom, and the University of Sheffield is famous for its research on the interaction between the gametes and embryo and maternal organism. So that this is something that we knew very little about, how the oocytes, sperm cells and embryos communicated with the mother. The other partner is University of Copenhagen, and together with the University of Copenhagen, Embryotrans Biotech, which is a small company, together with the University of Copenhagen, and their strength is in vitro embryo production technologies and also stem cell research. Our partner in Estonia is also University of Tartu, because of its competence in genomics, and also via the University of Tartu, we link animal medicine and human medicine together. So that as a result of that, we want to improve the scientific knowledge and innovation capacity in the linked fields of animal reproductive medicine and embryo technology. What I really want to mention is that this collaboration with the University of Sheffield and University of Copenhagen, with our university, didn't start from the beginning of Project CERMET. It started already much earlier with the University of Sheffield. We started collaboration in the frames of different cost action networks, actually. I think that the cost action is something that is also a success story in my eyes, because through these networks we have got many very valuable research contacts, and these contacts are lasting. They are really useful. Now, when speaking about the University of Copenhagen, I had to come back to the 90s, when the Nordic-Baltic cooperation was started to support by the Nordic Council of Ministers. So that via these very first contacts, we started to collaborate with the University of Copenhagen. So that this is something that we can show that maybe those success stories cannot come so soon. It takes years and years until we have the very strong project proposal on European level. But once you have this collaboration and this is lasting, then this is something that is valuable and should be kept. Now, what we have achieved during 2 years almost now. We, of course, increased knowledge in animal and human reproductive physiology very much, so that this is very valuable for our young stage researchers, first of all, because the competence they now have via this CERMET project is really very high, and I am sure that without this project they would know much less. Another thing is that we really increased our expertise in bovine embryo production. The embryo production in the lab is not exactly new for our university. We had in vitro embryos already on 90s, but the level of technology that we have achieved right now, it is impressive for us. And I would just say that during these last 2 years, we have increased efficiency of our embryo production by 2 times. So that maybe these percentages do not tell much, but I just illustrate that in average 30% of good oocytes develop to blastocyst stage, which is stage where we would be able to transfer the embryo back to the mother. In our experiments together with Lotte from the University of Copenhagen, we achieved the blastocyst rates much higher. It's even more than 60, which is very excellent results on global level. Also, what we have done together with Lotte is we have developed a strategy as scenarios for the commercialization of the research results. And these results are already in use because we have been lucky to have another financing from Estonia at the same time with CERMET. This is a collaboration project with some of the Estonian farms. So that this that has been achieved during the CERMET is already in use in this kind of collaboration. And finally, what is also valuable is that during the CERMET project, we have improved our international networking even further. We have been able, for example, to submit already 6 different Horizon 2020 proposals during these 2 years. Of course, not all of them are successful, and the last 3 proposals we have just submitted. But anyway, this seems that this collaboration works, and we have extended our range of partners to the other countries. Just a few keys of success. I think that to collaborate very well, we should have very clear goals. And when we make our collaboration plans, then we should create a win-win situation. All partners should benefit from that. And also, I guess that we have been very consistent and persistent in our work, so that it takes time. Everything doesn't go so fast. We should link our activities with society and also industry. And we should engage also new partners and extend the networking. And maybe the final fact is that we should always keep in the mind the future, because end of the project should not be the end of collaboration, so that the plans would be created with that view. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ulle. And now we have chance to hear to see the same success story from the other side.
So thank you very much also for inviting me. It's always nice to be participating in a story of success and not a troubleshooting thing. It has indeed been a very interesting project to be a partner in. So I will give a little background from my side. Ulle now explained the research project, and I was just a small part of the partnership. Here you see that I am from University of Copenhagen, but mostly I am the founder of the company Embryo Transbiotech. So I am a partner in the research project as a small-medium enterprise. And the way that, or my background in the University of Copenhagen is that I was in private industry. I'm a veterinarian of background. I was in the private human IVF field, and I was going to be a professor in America. And I was talking to Paul Hyttel, who is in the bottom middle picture, who is an international recognized stem cell researcher, and I has a history in being one of the IVF pioneers in the world. And he said to me, well, for the past 4 years since Dr. Avery, who is the lady in top of the photo in the middle, since she retired for 4 years, we have not had an embryo technology lab at the University of Copenhagen. So if I was offered if I would consider to stay and found my company, they would offer me the lab space. So this is a side remark that could be worth considering also in this forum, is that in America I was offered, through being a professor, it was encouraged that 1 day a week is for making your own business besides being a professor, something that we do mostly on the contrary have in Denmark and maybe around Europe and in the Baltic region as well. But this, I think, is something we could learn from. So the argument or justification for me to have a lab as a private company in the university is that I allow students to take part in projects that I have, and that I can be a partner in research projects. And this is how I became a partner in the CMED project. And so combining innovation and science, since I have a leg in both fields, I'm also affiliate associate professor. So we have from the industry, the product our company make gave me, through being a partner in this project, the possibility to get a contract with the UK for commercialization and a worldwide distribution of my products. And then through my academia position, I've been able to come to Estonia and train, and students from Estonia have been and trained with us. And like Yle said, their embryo production has gone up, and it's not only gone up, they are now the world-leading lab producing embryos. There are nobody, not even in North or South America, who are leaders that have the same high rates in this lab. So, of course, I'm really proud to have been part of that, and a great job they did. So the result, well, the university is spin-off, like we talked about. There are different commercialization ideas in the pipeline, also joint Danish-Estonian commercializations. The overall improvement of cattle breeding in Estonia, we are facing a very exciting era in all cattle breeding worldwide, and so IVF has been around for a long time, but the latest possibilities to make a biopsy of the embryo before it's transferred to its mother, whether it's a cow or a sheep or a goat. This biopsy and genomic analyzing, giving us an index number of the animal, has shortened generation intervals and put a large pressure on following this technology in the way you breed. Again, networking, like Yle said, it goes all the way back. Yle was a student a long time ago in Copenhagen. My mentor, who is retired, who was in the photo in the beginning, always gets tears in her ears when I go to Estonia and remembers Yle as a very ambitious young student. So things don't happen overnight, and it's not only a question of waiting for it, it's also, I think, really important to go across borders, travel, and even maybe also outside the Baltic Sea region and come back with international knowledge to your home institutions. So to sum up the win-win situation, Yle already explained a lot from the Estonian side. From my side, well, it allowed me for a contract and collaboration with a UK commercial company to become a worldwide distributor. It's opened a new market to me in the Baltic region, an area I would probably not at all focus on in the beginning of a startup company. And then it's allowed us to get a very thorough feedback on how our products work. If you're a startup company and you need to create results and make money, you don't have time to dwell on things you would like to dig into and investigate a little more. If you're in partner in a research project, you can angle and focus on these things as well, which is also a benefit for the business, but also for the end user, the customer of the product in the end. So thank you very much for having me here today and for being partner in this fantastic project.
Thank you. And now we are moving to the totally different area, to the extremely basic physics. And Professor Christoph Quitman from the Max IV laboratory, which is located quite close to Copenhagen.
We are neighbors. Thank you for having me. I would like to start this very short presentation with a personal note. This is my second visit to Tallinn. First time I was in Tallinn was in early November 1989. I was invited for a bilateral symposium between the German and the Soviet physical societies. When I returned home to Germany, I watched the TV news and I saw the Berlin Wall come down. Tallinn has changed since then. It is almost 30 years, but Tallinn has really developed into a modern European city. And since we're talking about progress and development and collaboration, I would like you to keep timescales in mind. It takes a generation to change people, and Tallinn and Estonia and the Baltic region in total has changed. I was given a strict rule to have 2 slides, and being a scientist, I stuck to that rule. So you will have to do with only 2 slides from me. I represent a research infrastructure. Sweden has for 30 and more years had a tradition of building electron accelerators that produce X-rays. X-rays that can be used in all kinds of material research. That starts typically with physics, but soon they brought in chemists, biologists, archaeologists, paleontologists, and many fields of natural science. After 30 years, Sweden has decided to retire the old infrastructure and build a new world-leading infrastructure. Since a year and a half, Sweden hosts the world's brightest X-ray source at Max IV laboratory, just outside of Lund. This is a big investment for Sweden into research and research infrastructure. It was deliberately done as a high-risk project, trying to provide something that was not available anywhere in the world. Uniqueness, you might remember that I mentioned that before. And it was meant as an open facility. For decades, Sweden has hosted scientists from all over the world. About 50% of the access to this infrastructure is from non-Swedish scientists. And Estonia is a particular example of how this access has developed and paid off. In the early 1980s, a collaboration was built, just like we heard it in the field of biology. Networks take time to develop, and they often start with individual people. It was a professor from Estonia that managed to start a collaboration in Sweden in the early 80s. That collaboration grew over PhD students and postdocs and further professors that jumped on board of this train. They have then managed to get funding through structural funds, and Estonia, together with Finland, has been building one of the experiments at Max IV. So of the 14 funded experiments that we have, Finland and Estonia have built one. And I think that is an outstanding success story for a small country. It has given Estonia access to a world-leading facility. It gives Estonia an aspect of uniqueness without having to build the entire infrastructure. By partnering across the Baltic Sea, Sweden has partnered with many countries. We have partners in Finland on this Finnish-Estonian beamline in Estonia. We're developing a new collaboration with Lithuania. There's another success story that I unfortunately don't have time to talk about, and that is Poland. Poland has sent 12 people to work with us in building this facility, and in exchange has been given all the blueprints so that at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, now there is a copy of our facility, and Poland has its first research infrastructure that it obtained through a collaboration with Sweden. We're working very closely with Germany as well, and we're working across the bridge with with people at Copenhagen University, DTU, and Aarhus University. And Norway is also a partner of the Max IV facility. So a small country partnering with a medium country can get access to world-leading scientific expertise. Sweden has followed the Chinese proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with friends. We are going with friends, and it's a pleasure to be part of such a collaboration that is centered around the Baltic Sea. I would like to end with the look out to industry. Partnering to industry is very important for us. It is a way to grow the region of Skåne, which is one of the most innovative and research-intensive areas, as you might have seen on the map in the first presentation. There's a strong collaboration between us and the universities, and there's this triangle between research infrastructures, universities, and industry that makes innovation a closed cycle. So to end, these are the scientific fields that are available at this Finnish-Estonian beamline, which will be getting first light next week and first users next year. If you're interested, I can go into great detail, but the important thing is that by providing a small investment into a big research infrastructure, you get access to the entire portfolio of experimental facilities at this infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So we have heard several success stories from both from the regional perspectives, the successful framework of cooperation, and also successful particular definite projects or infrastructures. So it's but to start with, perhaps we start with a more philosophical question. Concerning the Kadri Ukrainsky's presentation and your extensive analysis. You spoke about the sticks, carrots, and sermons. So, and you showed on the picture that all of them are very important. But what at this stage of development, what we have, where we are today, what do you think are the most important, the first measures or instruments to increase the cooperation? Are they all important? But we have to do something decisive, to be instrumental.
If you talk more specifically, not so much about moderate innovator countries in Horizon 2020, but if we talk more specifically about Baltic Sea region, then of course I think at first it seems that even among the policymakers it is not sure what the region is all about and what we would expect from this Baltic Sea region science cooperation. So I think this is something that the Baltic Science Network can contribute to really make sure what kind of benefits this cooperation would give to us. Because maybe I spoke a little about Estonia, and we have been really applying a lot for different international grants and being quite successful, right? In comparison to the others. But now, since our top research groups seem to be overloaded with Horizon projects and other cooperation projects, if we would tell them, now you should somehow change your networks towards more tight Baltic Sea region cooperation, okay, they would really like to know, is it long-term? What would it mean? What do you expect from us, right? So it is not so self-evident that there is a Baltic Sea region which is somehow a very special case for research cooperation.
Yeah, but we've seen here some examples where in this region where we together, Swedes together with the rest of the companions have built an excellent research infrastructure. That is, what could we suggest, this seems to be a good model, but how we can expand it to the other areas? What kind of advice would you give to the policymakers? But perhaps we start with the physicists.
I think humans make the difference. The best way to foster collaborations is to send young people around, to have a postdoc program of some sort or a PhD school that encourages people to work in the countries of the region, that builds personal connections to leading researchers in other countries, and then to bring them back with their knowledge and with the network that can last for decades, the entire career of a researcher.
Thank you. Kaisa.
Okay, I was very pleased to hear your presentation and just what you just said, because I thought that this issue of infrastructure should be really discussed in this audience as well. I think there's a lot to be done more. Of course, these huge infrastructure that you are presenting are obvious cases where huge benefits can be created economically, but also in terms of this broadening issue. In the bonus program, we have also addressed this issue of joint use of infrastructures, but unfortunately this was formulated in this Parliament Council decision, which is a legal basis for operation, in such a way that implementing it has been very complicated. And we just realized that at least in our field of science, marine science, which is very infrastructure intensive, that was not the most optimal way. We are talking marine research infrastructures mainly about research ships, and 1-2 weeks cruise can cost €500,000. And if this ship is going only 50% or 70% filled by scientists, so there is a lot to be improved in terms of efficiency if scientists from other countries can join. And at the moment there is not such a system or mechanism which would in a best way create this. It includes what kind of compensation countries should pay to each other when using or using these infrastructures. For example, in the North Sea, they have a very nice bartering system between countries changing ships without using money. And this is something that has to be developed. And this is usually these infrastructures, they are national assets. They are managed by national authorities. It's not so much in their interest to develop such a system. And I'm very happy to be in this audience because you are policymakers and you might see that there is some benefits to be gained from developing a system between Baltic Sea countries. Maybe some structural funds or something else could be used for such a development, or Baltic Science Network could make a mapping or analysis about different fields of science where there is potential for much better use of infrastructures, which will then have a knock-on, young scientists going to different countries, and I think this is really, really important.
Thank you. Would you like to comment on or add to the same question? Or?
Yeah, I think that it's extremely important that you already have pointed out. This is a question how to better use the infrastructure. There have been very big investments into research infrastructure also in Baltic countries. And what I really see is that sometimes not all of this infrastructure is very well used. And one way how to attract more scientists to use these our possibilities for the infrastructure is to arrange more networking events in Estonia or the other countries. Of course, it's the same thing. Or, for example, even the big conferences on your field. What we have experienced in our field of agriculture and veterinary medicine is that bringing people here and to see this infrastructure and possibility. This will initiate the discussions about the further collaboration, and very often this kind of discussions lead to real collaboration in the future.
Yeah, that's quite obvious that in order to collaborate, you need this kind of win-win situation, what was described here in many different occasions. It means that there should be an incentive for the researchers to work together. And it means whether this is a uniqueness or whether this is a very good research infrastructure or very good ideas. This is quite self-evident that we don't need, when we speak about the cooperation or the around the Baltic Sea, that it's impossible to have it without this kind of win-win situation, which is people can perceive that they win from that. You wanted to add something?
I think exploiting the full potential of research infrastructures is really key. They're expensive, but they're also very powerful. And the best way to do that is to open them. In photon science, that field that I represent, these facilities are open to anybody. There's no national limitation. There are no quotas. And that makes for a very vibrant and competitive environment, but it raises the level of the national research that is done. And we're very actively trying to push such openness. Just on Monday, I was in Brussels launching a collaboration between X-ray related infrastructures all across Europe, 19 of them getting together and trying to develop smart specialization, coherent roadmaps, and open access procedures that will benefit all of Europe. So I think the smaller research infrastructures should learn from how this is done in the already more established ones. I mean, we learned it from CERN, for example. We're not the first to invent this. I don't want to claim that.
Yeah, but concerning the infrastructures, then the question, quite a difficult question arises for the local policymakers. How to choose on which infrastructures some particular nations are able and willing to participate, and that is a question that should be solved domestically at national basis. But several times the long-term commitment and the time scale emerged. So you demonstrated with this CERMET program project that it was based on the earlier cooperation, and it should perhaps are you convinced how it goes on when the widening or the twinning project will end? Do you need another instrument, or are you waiting from another instrument for the European Commission to emerge in the next framework program, or are you able to walk on your own?
I guess that we do not expect that the same partnership will have another twinning project. So that right now we are already planning using the other possibilities that we probably have. So that as I told, we had tried already to write some other proposals, and we also have some plans how to extend our collaboration with the industry, with entrepreneurs. So that it is quite obvious in the field of agriculture and veterinary medicine that your research has to end up with some practical solutions. So that if we don't have that, then our research is not very much justified. So that finally we want to go on with our technology on the level that it is possible to commercialize. So that I guess that in longer perspective, this kind of widening measures like twinning and also ERA chairs and teaming, I would very much hope that these programs will last, and the other groups have a possibility to have the same kind of way to improve the competence to have more excellence in their very narrow field. Because to be honest, in our field, it is really so narrow field that we cannot expect only from the collaborations around the Baltic Sea. We just have to engage the other partners. And what I would like to say is also that with the help of the projects like CERMETIS, we can also attract our other partners in the region of Baltic Sea. For example, the Latvian partners have already contacted us and asked for our knowledge and asked for our competencies in this field, so that they have heard about the collaborations that we have on our field of reproductive medicine, and they want to join us in the future. So that definitely, I guess that this collaboration around the Baltic Sea is really very, very important. And when we have to find solutions for very exciting questions in science, then with the help of much wider networks, we can bring this excellence and competence to our region.
But that's actually seems what actually is needed from this kind of increasing the competitiveness of the region and Europe as a whole. And if you will attract the Americans or the Chinese, it will be even better. That's the actual ultimate goal, isn't it? Yeah.
So I think the importance of, like Yle just mentioned briefly, it's important to attract people to here, but just to start by engaging in the conferences in your specific field internationally is really, really important. That's where you'll attract the Chinese and the South Americans, and it's a lot easier at these meetings to introduce people to each other, and many collaborations have started for me at these places. So that's definitely a way to start.
So to sum this kind of intervention up, that it means that the twinning has been a great instrument, and you wish it extension for the next period. But what about the other instruments, like bonus? It's also a success story. Do you think that the example of bonus should be somehow used as a model, or the bonus itself is able to be extended to include some more areas, perhaps not only the marine business, but
yes, we think that bonus can be a model, and we are not the only ones who are thinking. We think that in Europe we have also a joint program initiative for the oceans and healthy oceans and seas, TPR oceans, which is looking at issues in a European level. But there are so many things that can only be solved and studied in a regional seas level. And in Europe we have regional seas, Baltic Sea, we have North Sea, we have the Black Sea, we have the Mediterranean Sea. They all have to be, certain issues are some that have to be studied in regional sea scale, not in the European scale. And it is very much our thinking that this model could be transferred to other regional seas as well. And as I mentioned in my presentation, we have been collaborating with the North Sea countries, France, Netherlands, Belgium, and now also UK is interested, and Norway, to have a twin program in the future, because we have analyzed quite carefully about both the natural ecosystems of these seas. We know that the climate issues are very much in common. The seas are connected through the Danish Straits. The policy landscape is very similar in these the two seas. We have the Baltic Sea Environment Protection Commission, HELCOM. Very similar organization is the North Sea side. It's called OSPARCOM. So this is what is going on already.
So thank you. I'm looking at the watch. So perhaps we take some questions or interventions from the audience. So, do you have questions to the distinguished panelists? Or
Ülemust, Estonian Research Council, thank you for such interesting presentations. Actually, I'm interested in those carrots because I understand that we have a common Baltic Sea space in which we are interested in. But my question is, you as policymakers, researchers, funders, is there needed, for example, some networking in case of Horizon 2020 or because research, innovation, it needs wider space. Maybe it will be useful to do it bottom up.
yeah, who is able to answer that question? Kadri, perhaps you told also that the coordination of the national instruments, but it's top-down, not bottom-up.
I think both are needed, bottom-up and top-down, because if you are not sure, for example, if you talk about Baltic Sea region, what would be the promising fields, and it's very difficult to find them by analysis or just negotiations, you would follow some bottom-up initiatives which have emerged. As you heard here, there are many kind of areas where there is high functional proximity already. It can be based on joint infrastructure, or it can be also as a result of different earlier projects, etc. The question is, how do you encourage those things in the fields where they are not existing? And there you can encourage them by different types of carrots or different types of instruments that are more broader based. Okay? Because it's kind of, we wouldn't be here if we would be very happy about the level of cooperation in all different fields. And of course, maybe social sciences were not among the fields that we discussed here today, and they are not so much based on joint infrastructure, but rather common challenges in solving some societal issues, right? And there maybe this bottom-up approach together with a more top-down coordination about different, let's say, funding options and also aligning the strategies, etc., could be beneficial.
Anyone wants to comment on that? No? Then yeah, more questions from the audience. If there is no more, I just try to improvise. Then what? Dimitri.
Yes, I very much like the presentation by Mrs. Ukrainsky, and I believe that some of the measures that you proposed could be reflected upon to be, implemented even at European level, because you propose some quite soft structures. And I think this kind of structures, for example, service centers, shared service centers, or particularly designed campaigns, for example, could be very useful to be taken up in the framework program, for example, as an horizontal accompanying measure. Thank you.
So if to extend your intervention about this possible, how you call it, new information centers, which were already touched upon in the previous session as well, I think. How could you think it more in a more instrumental way? How could they look like? And then please afterwards I ask the question to the scientists on the board, in the panel. Did they lack an information? Do you the scientists feel that they need more information? Is it a common understanding, or is it a real problem? But first of all, what do you think of that? How should they look like, this kind of centers?
I think one type of the centers I mentioned was virtual service centers, which would really be accessible from different sites and would basically behave or look like a databases which are up to date and which management is shared. So it's not one agency responsible for uploading all the information. It would be not only for scientists, and I think I need to say that again, because mostly scientists know their field and their capabilities of different actors. The problem is that if we want to expand the cooperation of scientists towards societies more, like engaging entrepreneurs, engaging public sector agencies, or for example, what I think we should perhaps discuss in Estonia, engage also institutions of professional higher education to be participants in Horizon or Baltic Sea Region Cooperation, then the up-to-date information base is much more needed than purely for scientists. It's not so relevant, I think, but they can respond, of course. But what I would comment about those shared service centers, I think also the kind of, most of the countries are very small, and for them to keep very substantial competencies in NCPs or also related to different fields of science, different programs, and that those consultants or support persons could know all the conditions of grants, and it would take a lot of input. So, and we could share this responsibility, and it doesn't matter if a researcher is from Estonia or from Finland, they can access those shared support structures. And I think this could be one way of sharing this load at the same time of benefiting more widely.
So Ulle, you are in a unique position. You are the top administrator at the university and also a researcher. Do you think what your feeling about the accessibility of the information?
So maybe the question is that there are really too much information for the ordinary scientist. And if you really want to find something that is suitable for you, then it takes a lot of time. So that I guess that researchers really need someone who is expert and where you can just go and describe your wishes, your research needs, your collaboration needs, and so on. And together it's possible to find the best solution at that moment. And also what I think that what we also need it is some help in our innovation support or the technology transfer support, because what I see at our universities that our people are ready to file the patents and so on, but the patents just stay like they are. Nobody takes care of them later to find the possibility to commercialize, to license it out and so. And another problem connected to the innovation is that very often it happens that that your invention is exactly not ready yet. You need to do some extra work, maybe some kind of prototype has to be created or some parts has to be improved and so on. Then it comes up with extra financing also. So that there is something to think about the financing system, so that all the chain from the knowledge creation until the technology transfer and commercialization should be covered. So that definitely I would vote for the service centers and the better service for the researchers.
Yeah, thank you. Lotte, would you like to add something?
I can only agree. It seems like a very good idea to have a service center. But then again, also on the other side, there should be cautiousness, not that each time there is a research grant or research money that too much is spent on not research, on administration. There is consultants to help apply the grant, to service where to look for the grant, and once you have the grant, you have to hire people to administer the grant, to give the reports, and to make sure budgets are made, and that all accounting can be actually very tricky to do in the exactly right way. So there is something to be really cautious of there, that money is not wasted.
So thank you. Now it's possibility for the distinguished panelists to have the final word. Do you missed something earlier and want to speak something out what is has not been spoken out yet? Yeah, starting from that.
I would wish that the transnational barriers become lower. I think there are excellent examples of collaboration on the individual level. That is not a problem, but as soon as institutions become involved or funding agencies become involved, we find it very difficult. So I would encourage an exchange of people, because people transfer information and they build culture, and I would hope that in this geographical regions the countries can agree to lower the formal barriers that allow real collaborations, including the exchange of people, exchange of money, exchange of services. Like you mentioned with the ships, it's a shame if a ship sails out and is only half filled, and there are a bunch of researchers standing in the port just nearby who don't get a chance to use that ship. That needs to disappear.
Thank you. Any other panelists?
Yes, what I would perhaps as a social scientist stress, because here we talk about maritime research, climate research, but there is, I think, a lot of unused potential in terms of innovation in public services, because what we have is common challenges in Europe and European countries related to aging of population, decreasing population, putting our health and education systems under pressure, and labor markets. But the solutions that we can offer really are different from country to country. And for example, many of Baltic Sea region countries are kind of trying to develop different national registries or registry-based systems, and we have a lot of common potential there to develop different services to improve that. So I think maybe this is one field also where we could think of about common Baltic Sea region topics. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I just repeat what you said about this so much unused potential in the Baltic Sea region, and that's really true. And the only way of kind of discovering these new potentials is that you bring together people. It's only brains which can get ideas, which can then create something that we do not know even what could be created. And one word about this infrastructure issue is that we have to somehow really justify in the European context why this regional cooperation is so important. And I think that this, in addition to the Baltic Sea as bonus target, this infrastructure is a very good argument because regionally joint use of infrastructures is the kind of most efficient way. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just say that one aspect that we should keep in mind that we still have some instruments that work really very, very good, and we should keep them going on, like all the financing opportunity for the networkings, and also the mobility possibilities, especially for the young stage researchers, but also for the experienced researchers, and all those widening instruments. And of course, I would like very much if we had possibility for the more possibility for the financing of this Baltic Sea cooperation around the Baltic Sea, so that these are my wishes.
Thank you. So, thank you all for your presentations and for the very rich discussion. And let's give a big hand for the panelists.